internet, the Psychologist Casual Review, and today I wanted to review the social significance of communism considered in the light of psychoanalysis. So it's kind of a mouthful of a title, and if you ever watched my video on this book, Psychoanalytic Studies of the Personality by Fairbairn, you know that this article was coming in terms of reviewing, because it's an article I found so interesting and just so genuinely exciting to read. So let's preface this by just me giving a bit of a disclaimer. I am not an economist, I am not a sociologist, and I'm definitely not an expert on communism, its history, or anything like that. However, what I found very interesting is that in this article, Fairbairn is going to do something that I found very wild. He's going to try and psychoanalyze the whole ideology of communism, and I felt that that was, just to put it bluntly, a bold move. But it's kind of why I like those articles so much, those miscellaneous articles, is that they're kind of much wilder than his standard articles, or his legacy articles, as I like to call them. So basically, for him, communism is a natural evolution of the society itself. Because for Fairbairn, societies have always tended to outgrow the family. Because for him, the fundamental unit of mankind is the family, then it was the tribe, then it was a clan, and then it was the state. And what do we have after the state? We have international community. And he says that communism is there as an answer. It's there to extend the family to everyone, because in the ideology of communism, there is this idea that all the states are to be together. There is no difference. Everyone should be intertwined. Not individualistic states, but just a whole, a bit like what was the Soviet Union, I suppose. And at the time he wrote it, there was the Soviet Union. So I think that's the model he had in his head. And as I've stated earlier, I'm not an expert on communism, so what I'm saying might be off, but it's kind of my understanding of the text, that because there is such an inclination towards egalitarianism, having everyone play on the same field, that there's much less inegalities in communism, or at least in the ideal of communism. That basically for Fairbairn, what at the core communism is a wish to get rid of the Oedipus complex. And see why I felt that it was wild? It's because that's really a wild interpretation. Because for him, the whole point of society is always to try and diminish the intensity of the Oedipus complex, right? So communism is going to try, according to Fairbairn, of course, not anyone else I've ever read, but for Fairbairn, it's this point where communism is going to try and go without, is going to try and get rid of the Oedipus complex, trying to get rid of the libidinal limitations that come with the Oedipus complex. And that is wildly interesting, because for him, basically, communism would be basically about uplifting the individual and giving him more libido, so more potential to do more stuff. And innately, it seems to me, or at least when I read the text, innate to my thinking was, oh, well, he's very pro-communist. Because basically he's not stating it outright, but he implies that capitalism takes away the libido, takes away the ability to act upon the world, or to invest it in a positive way, or in a life drive way, right? So it's not the death drive. So I'm wondering if, in a way, he's not implying that capitalism is, wrong, in a way, because he also says that capitalism upholds the patriarchy, which is incredibly interesting. I did not know that people thought like that in those days. I thought that those concepts were more modern, but apparently not so much, because he wrote that in the early 30s. So basically for him, capitalism is patriarchal, and it reinforces the Oedipus complex, meaning that we have less libido to spend in that system. So communism is trying to break free of it. And by doing so, there is an intense effort to try and make the child a child of the state, meaning not one individual nation, but more like the ideology of communism, and substituting family values for communist values, which would have the better interests of everyone, not just the family. Because for Fairbairn, the problem with the family is that it has its own set of rules, and wealth and inequality trickle down from that, because the wealth is going to be accumulated by members of the family, and they're going to spread it out to the family. He says that really wealthy men, at least in the 30s, did not tend to enjoy their wealth. But who did was the family. So the family has is a group that's in a way cut off. It's us against them kind of mentality. And for Fairbairn, communism tries to break that mentality of us against them, or we are the W's, let's say. The W's always stick together. The W's have their set of values. Everyone else cannot understand the W's. Well, communism is going to come and break the W's, family rules, and try and open it up to the world to make it more egalitarian in a way. And what makes the article fundamentally fun to read. It's because you get that idea that basically psychoanalysis is merging with macro phenomena like societies, and that's great. I always like it when it tries to go that far, even though I cannot attest at all of the reliability or the validity of what Fairbairn's put forth, but nonetheless, incredibly interesting, really. And what he's going to point out is that basically the fundamental idea of this article came when he started reading literature about early civilizations or colonialized civilizations. And when he started to read those psychoanalytic points of view on colonized civilization, he was like, wait. Why won't we do it for our civilizations? Why won't we make a psychoanalysis of what's happening now at time of writing, so in the 30s? And yeah, great. I mean, that's cool. I mean, in a way, it's fundamentally entertaining. And it's also something that I feel kind of shows the genius of Fairbairn, even though it's a trivial detail. But I just think it just shows how brilliant he was. For him, the going forward with the ending of the Oedipus complex was going to have massive pushback, because basically the more the states unite into one, he calls it a globalized world, right? Like what we have now, basically. He says the more we're going to have pushback from individual states, and even people within the individual states, to keep the system going, meaning patriarchy, capitalism, and the family system. All of that intertwined. They're going to fight back, push back. So he said we should expect nationalists to rise to the challenge of globalism. And that's exactly what has happened and what is happening right now. And I found that so mind-blowing that he was able to deduce something in the 30s that's still relevant now. And he says that basically, for example, the Nazis, and he talks about the Nazis in this article, says that this is a counter answer to communism. It's no, we're not getting rid of any tradition, any family structures, or the patriarchy, or capitalism. We're keeping all of that, and we're going to try and break communism. And that's very interesting, that both the tendencies are there and fighting against each other. And he said that they're undissociable. When you have one, you have the other, and you should expect them to fight it out. And that's very interesting, and it's something that's still very, very true now. When we see all the conflicts, it's exactly what's happening. And that isn't to say that you shouldn't take a side or try and do something, but it's incredibly interesting though to see the dual movement pushing through at the same time and fighting each other. And basically that was very interesting. And he said that the world will go more in a globalized way from that point on, that it's going to be more and more inclusive, more and more states are going to join. And he had this idea of at some point of supranational institutions like the European Union. I mean, he doesn't say it like that. There was still the League of Nations at the time, but the European Union is like that. Americas function a bit like that in trading systems. And even Asia, I mean, all of our world is starting to get intertwined, and internet has greatly helped as we can talk, which would not have been possible 70 years ago. And that's also very true, and he was able to deduce it from just his clinical understanding and his theoretical framework, and that's incredible. I mean, I'm amazed that he was able to do something like that, because I am so excited, because when I read retroactively what they were able to deduce, I'm like, oh yeah, but they were so right. And when I was a teenager, what I read on the future, right, was so absolutely wrong and disastrously wrong. Like, no one was able, when I was a teenager, to predict that there would be a coming forward of nationalism, of extremist ideologies. All of that seemed to go, and they were able in those days, in the 30s, to see the writing on the wall, of course, of the Second World War, but even present day. So incredibly interesting, and that's something I'm very excited about, and I feel that it just shows, it's a testament to the brilliance of Fairbairn, really. And of course, I'm being very positive, but there might have been some criticism of communism in the book, or in the paper rather, but I don't really feel that he was too critical of it. For him, it was like the natural evolution of society, like what society would become. And I also find it very interesting, because he was in a monarchy. He never mentions monarchy, right? And you would think that, given what he thinks of patriarchy and capitalism, monarchy would basically be like the most traditionalistic, Oedipal system. But funnily enough, he doesn't even mention it. And that I find very funny. It's like saying by omitting, in a way. And of course, one can only bring out the biggest speculations. And of course, I don't know Fairbairn's personal life. He might have been very anti-communist. I have no clue. Really, I don't know. But by the essay I read, it gave more the sensation that communism, even if it tries to get egalitarian, is driven by unconscious motives, as are all systems. And I found that very refreshing, because nowadays we tend to just abolish the unconscious when it comes to groupal thinking or to society and civilization itself. We feel that everything is purely conscious when it's not. And I think that everything has an unconscious dimension. That doesn't mean that once we find the unconscious, meaning everything will become easy, right? I don't believe that. That's naive. But I still find it very interesting to interrogate all of those ideas through the lens of psychoanalysis, as Fairbairn did in this article, and what made it so brilliant in my eyes. So I hope you liked the video. I'm pretty much said what I needed to say and I wanted to say. And if you ever have a question, please feel free to ask it in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.